Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Buffalo State Data Talk. I'm your host, Heather Campbell, and thank you for joining us. Today, we're talking to Angela Horton, the Director of Enterprise Data Quality and Accuracy at a large healthcare organization. Angela has worked in the field for over 10 years and was recently awarded the Women in Technology Beta Award from Infotech Western New York. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's get started. Could you give us a general overview of the work that you do?
So as the Director of Data Quality and Accuracy, my team really focuses on assessing the data quality in our source systems. And that's everything from creating rules that identify data quality issues to monitoring those data quality issues, but furthermore, sending our data owners and our stewards those issues for them to go improve in their source systems, which really increases the quality of data in our data sources.
So it sounds like you do everything having to do with data a little bit.
Yeah, so a lot of understanding and profiling of that data, finding anomalies is a big part and portion of what my teams do. And really they bring those anomalies that may not have, that the data owners may not have even known that existed in the source systems. And we also gather a lot of those requirements from data scientists because they're in that data all day long and they're finding a lot of these anomalies. So it's a nice partnership between data science, the operational folks, and my data quality team.
So now that we have a bit of a general idea of what you do, could you tell me what a typical day or a typical week looks like?
Yeah, so being the director, I sit at more of a higher level view and vantage point. So a day in the life of myself would be lots of meetings, lots of coordinating, lots of directing of different people and folks and processes and getting them all on the same page and getting buy-in a lot of times from different areas. So I consider my job more like a traditional traffic director, right? I am directing people from going this direction, that direction, getting all the right people in the same, moving into the same fashion. And so I probably spend 80% of my time in meetings of all sorts and different kinds.
Excellent.
But I would say when it gets to more of my analysts and what their day-to-day looks like, which is probably more interesting for the folks that are listening in on the call, they're integrated very much into the data, and they're mining millions and billions pieces of data at a time, working with different tools. And really finding those anomalies and then working with the different constituents throughout the organization to understand if these are anomalies, what can we do to fix those? Is it a people process or technology issue that we kind of need to solve for? So they get the more fun job in my opinion.
So of all of that huge amount of data that your team is working through, where does the data come from? Like, what kind of data is it?
It's all over the board. So it's patient-centered data. It's our practitioners, our providers. We have claims data. We have what you'll hear maybe in the industry as HIE, which is Health Information Technology and data. So it comes from EMRs, it comes from claims processing, it comes from enrollment, it comes from all over the place. We have vendors that submit data to us oftentimes. So there's a wide range of various data sources and people that own those various data sources.
Once your team has either collected the data or been sent the data and they clean it, what happens then? Like, how is the data actually used?
That's a great question. And something that I care very passionately about. I started my career in analytics 10 years ago, and I've done everything from business intelligence to clinical analytics to client analytics. And that's really the heart of where this data is being used for. So after my team identifies the issues and we work with our partners to cleanse the data, That really is the downstream impacts of what our data scientists, our client reporting teams, our clinical analytics teams are using to do their predictive models, whether it be predicting have heart problems in the future, or providing lists to our care managers to do outreach because maybe this person isn't quite high risk now, but they could be in the future based on their predictive model. And so I always say the cleaner the data is, the more accurate their predictive models are, the better statistically significant they will be, and the better outreach that we can have for our patients and customers.
And what kind of software technology or programming languages do your analysts use to, clean and analyze the data?
There's a bunch out there. Gartner Magic Quadrant, for those who don't know Gartner yet, they're a great organization for understanding the leading industry competitors and companies and vendors, but one of them is Informatica. And so we use Informatica to do that identification and that cleansing and that monitoring. Our data scientists, though, however, use a lot of like R and Python. They use SPSS to a certain extent. That's an IBM product, which really does some good statistical analysis. We use Tableau, PowerBI. I mean, there's a lot of really great tools out there to do like dashboarding. So I would say, there's an ETL aspect, which is extract, transform, and load, which is basically how you get the data into those databases. And then my data quality team picks that up, or sometimes we do it in motion. That means, evaluating the data before it even gets into the database, making sure it's cleansed and clean, and then that's where the data scientists and the analysts pick it up using things like R and Python and Power BI and Tableau to do those different models and dashboards and all that fun stuff.
You've mentioned a lot of different groups that help move the data from, the collection stage all the way to analysis. Could you talk briefly about what those different groups are, their names or typical titles, and what they actually do in the process?
Yeah, so it always starts, in my opinion, with a combination of a data analyst and a developer. And the data analyst role really, is the person who's going to profile. So say you have a set of data from a vendor that you would like to bring into a database. The data analyst will go through and profile that data and understand typically what the nature of that information is. Are there duplicates in the data? Do I need to transform it or map it into a certain way that it should look? So that person really kind of puts together like a requirements document in a way, saying I have these 25 data elements and we need to conform them and map them maybe into the standard that we already have in our warehouse. That requirements document then gets provided to a developer, which, that's where the ETL comes into place. Again, that transform and load process. And they'll code in something like Power Center or, Alteryx or SSIS. There's several different ETL tools out there to use. So they'll take those requirements documents and start to code and bring that data through. Generally, for a lot of organizations, there's also a quality assurance area that will take the code from the developer and make sure that it's in line with the requirements document. So their role is to make sure that everything that the developer is coding is up to spec with what the analysts have documented in terms of requirements. So once all of that is done, then we use something called the SDLC process. It's basically promoting code through a development area and then a quality assurance area and then finally a productionalized area. So once quality assurance signs off, that data goes into production. And then that's where the folks like the data scientists and the analysts, people doing the dashboards, operational folks can really go and start to query and analyze the data. So I'd say that's a good kind of like workflow of how to get the data through the process into actual usable data.
Are you able to set time aside for your own professional development? And if so, what kind of activities do you do?
Yes. And again, like leading by example, right? That's what we should do as leaders. So it's important for me to carve out that time for me, so my teams know that it's okay for them to carve out that time for them, right? Because like we're at the grind all day long. But you know what? Every Friday, carve out 2 hours for some development time for you. And I'm doing it for myself. So, I want them to do it for themselves as well. So Udemy has a lot of really great courses, and a lot of times, many of them are on sale, for 80% off. So there's LinkedIn Learning as an option too. There's a lot of really great resources on YouTube as well. So like if you're into Power BI, there's like Guy in a Cube, I think his name is, and he walks through a bunch of different learning opportunities, and there's a lot of really nice resources out there. So I personally take advantage of those still, and they're very helpful for me.
Excellent. Maybe you can send me a link to a couple of your favorite ones and we can post them in the description of the episode.
Yeah, I definitely will.
So you previously worked as a data governance manager, and data governance is a really important part of data analytics, but something that's not always necessarily talked about. So could you tell us what exactly is data governance and how does it play a role in your work?
Yeah, so data governance is, in my mind, a component of information management. I would say, so taking kind of a little step back, information management is everything from data governance to data quality, reference table management, reference data management, standards, security, data use policies, master data management. So all of those things kind of roll up into what information management, the discipline, really is. And so a component of that is data governance. DAMA, which is Data Management Association, which is a well-renowned association in the data world, they define it as planning, oversight, and control over management of data and the use in the data-related sources. So, included in that are security, the data use policies, stewardship committees, custodian responsibilities. So when I spoke about working with our data owners and our stewards on fixing that data, that's where data quality and data governance really have a nice partnership, because as we're identifying the data issues, then we work with the data governance team to say, okay, you have your data stewards and owners. Let's work together to try to get those teams to resolve and fix those issues. Master data kind of also plays in line with that too. So mastering your data means that you kind of have this golden record. So Heather is Heather, no matter which company she has gotten insurance with, she's always just going to be Heather in the system with one master ID, right? Because if you're moving in and out of somewhere, oftentimes you'll get several different IDs, and it's really hard to do a longitudinal analysis. If I've got to know that you've got 25 IDs, mastering your data really brings the best data for you up to light and allows the analysts, the data scientists to really understand that that is Heather, and all of her information is going to be under that one master ID. But there are often times when you're mastering data that the technologies, while they're really great at being able to auto collapse and merge and split things, sometimes it's just not always that easy. So you need a data owner or steward to do some clerical review on maybe some suspect records and have them manually go in and collapse those records for you or for me or whomever. And so that's where the partnership between data governance and master data comes into play, because the technology solution may not always be able to do that automatically, but the stewards and that real human eye and that special touch can really go in and make those determinations. And so they partner with data governance too. So data governance is really at the the heart of managing data.
So it's something that's very important and needed for you to make the most and best analysis of your data.
Yes, I think so. There are two really great pieces of literature out there. One is Get Governed by Morgan Templar, and another is Non-Invasive Data Governance by Robert Seiner. And both of those books I've read front to back, and they are fantastic data governance books if anybody wants to get up to speed with the importance of data governance, kind of some playbooks, and the best approaches to data governance itself.
Excellent. And we'll link those two books in the description of the episode too. So I know I mentioned you worked previously in data governance, and I just kind of want to talk a little bit about your career path now. So you received a bachelor's degree from Buffalo State in mathematics. Let's just start there. Mm-hmm. How would you say that your background in mathematics affected your career path?
I personally think mathematics teaches you problem solving, how to think outside the box with different problems, because with math, there's often not a black and white way to get there. And so in mathematics, if you're able to solve a problem several different ways, then when you enter into, the workforce, there's very rarely a time where a problem you face in your professional career that will have a black and white way to get there. I feel like I've learned from all of the courses I've taken at Buff State, whether it be numerical analysis or Calc 3, or you're bringing me back now, but they really taught me how to think outside the box. Some advice, if I could give some for our listeners, would be, don't be afraid to, you're a fresh eye in an organization. Don't be afraid to ask questions and kind of poke holes in some of the processes, because what you're going to find is that your outside the box thinking is going to be refreshing to the organization, and they'll start to find new ways and they'll implement your ideas into doing things a little bit differently. And I truly believe that mathematics helped me do that.
So what made you first interested in moving into your field?
Well, I started as an intern at a healthcare brokerage. So I don't know if our listeners know much about the difference between a healthcare payer versus a broker, but there are brokers that work with the employer groups to sell them insurance, and they try to pick the best insurance company that makes sense for that employer group. Mm-hmm. So I started an internship with a brokerage, and I was doing data entry at the time. They were a very small broker, but I learned so much about, how to use Excel and what data entry was. And then I started moving into more putting that data entry into databases and starting to analyze it. And that's when I really realized I wanted to do data analytics, because what I really enjoyed at the time was making pivot tables and uncovering some trends that my boss at the time didn't really know were even out there. So uncovering those patterns and those anomalies that no one would know of unless somebody would dig into them. Mm-hmm. That's when I realized that this was for me. And then from there, I started at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York as an employer group reporting analyst. And then I kind of moved into business intelligence, and then I got into clinical analytics, which kind of gets into data science. And then through my path, I realized how dirty the data was and how difficult and how much time people spend on cleaning data as analysts. And so I said, I feel like I need to be part of a data management group or information management or data quality or whatever it is, because I need to be part of the solution to cleaning and cleansing the data so that my colleagues down the road don't have to spend so much time doing that work, and they can actually spend that time analyzing and doing the things that they love to do.
Yeah. from the way you're talking, it was really fun because I could tell you were passionate about when you first saw those pivot tables. And it is really cool to like take some data and then you find like I got these results and they could make real actionable changes. Like it's a really awesome feeling to have and to be able to help in that process, cleaning the data so that you can get there. It must be very rewarding.
It's very rewarding.
That's awesome. It's great that you're passionate about what you do.
Yes.
So many of our listeners are younger people who are students or still in school. So as somebody who is in a leadership role, who has had people working underneath her and has mentored people before, what advice would you give somebody who's interested in working as a data analyst or data scientist?
Yes. I think there are a lot of great resources by reaching out to folks on LinkedIn, for example. I've done that in my past. I have searched maybe my dream job or a, position or a role. You can type in the search engine data scientist and up will come a bunch of people that do that work. And I would encourage listeners to reach out to them, message them and say, hey, I'm just curious to learn about what you do at your organization. Can you share, some information? I've done that myself and I found it very valuable. And you end up having now a network of people to maybe bounce ideas off of. So it's kind of twofold in terms of learning different roles but also creating that space and that network, especially in this virtual world that we live in. That's a good way to do it. There are a lot of groups too out in the LinkedIn space so our listeners can, ask to get involved with. There's also an app called Clubhouse. Have you ever heard of Clubhouse?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Clubhouse is a really great option as well. And it's like I would describe it as a real life or a live podcast, non-video, but people just getting together in a room to talk about a topic.
Are there a lot of Clubhouse groups for data analytics and stuff like that? I'm not familiar.
You would be surprised. Lots around data analytics, data governance, there's a lot, data management. Mm-hmm. I would have people check it out.
So finally, before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know that we didn't get a chance to cover today?
No, I would say just keep pursuing your dreams and just for them to remember that success is at the eye of the beholder and success means something different to all of us. And as long as we're all happy, for me, I tell many people that that's success right there. It's just to be happy and that's it.
I think that's excellent advice. Well, Angela, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing.
And to all of our listeners, if you haven't already, check out our previous podcasts. They're available wherever you listen to podcasts. And for more information about starting your career as a data scientist, go to dataanalytics.buffalostate.edu. And don't forget to subscribe so that you get notified each time we release a new episode of Buffalo State Data Talk.